Julian sat in the darkest corner of the page and pod. He looked miserably at a crumpled piece of paper. He had a leather notebook filled with the most beautiful poetry in the city. Tonight, his poem was chosen to open the Grand Arts Gala. But during practice that morning, the stage manager sighed loudly. The crew laughed because Julian froze and could not stop stuttering under the bright stage lights. Aunt Sasha watched him from the counter. She knew that sad look instantly. It was the look of a person trapped inside their own fear. She walked over quietly. She set down a frosty, cold glass of sweet iced coffee. Beside it, she placed a thick, warm slice of oven-baked banana cake. The sweet smell filled the air. Julian looked up through his messy hair. I can't, he whispered, his jaw locked up on the words. The cake is for your energy and the coffee is for your spirit, Sasha said with a kind smile. You don't need to talk, just eat. Julian took a bite of the fluffy cake and a sip of the cold coffee. He felt a rush of comfort. The doctors say my body is fine, Julian said, tears filling his eyes. But my chest gets tight. The words are loud in my head, Sasha, but on stage I get stuck. Tonight everyone will laugh at me. Aunt Sasha wiped her hands on her apron. A clever spark flashed in her eyes. Julian, let me tell you a short story about an old palace musician named Thomas. Julian ate his cake and listened closely. Thomas played the grand drums for a powerful general, but he had an unsteady hand that shook. Before a big battle march, Thomas was terrified his uneven drum beats would ruin the song and make the soldiers mock him. What did he do? Julian asked, forgetting his stutter for a second. Sasha smiled. He changed the music. Instead of trying to play a perfectly straight beat, Thomas used his shaky hand to create a brand new bouncing rhythm. He made the pauses and the extra taps sound completely intentional. The soldiers loved it so much they marched with more energy than ever before. Thomas did not fix his mistake. He made his mistake the best part of the song. Aunt Sasha leaned in closer. Her voice became a warm whisper. Your fear wins because you treat your pauses like a failure, Julian. Stop trying to speak like everyone else. Tap your fingers to your heartbeat. Turn your stutter into a beat. Sasha whispered a clever plan into his ear. Julian's eyes went wide, and a big, happy smile replaced his sadness. That evening, the big auditorium was completely full. The bright spotlight hit the center of the stage. Julian walked out confidently and stood at the microphone. The crew that laughed earlier watched from the wings, waiting for him to fail. Julian looked at the audience. He did not look afraid. Instead, he reached out and firmly tapped the metal microphone stand with his ring 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. He began to read his poem. When his voice hit a tough word and began to repeat a sound, there, he didn't freeze or panic. Instead, he intentionally tapped his fingers against the wooden podium in perfect time with his repeating words, tap, tap, tap. He turned his stutter into a rhythmic musical instrument. He dragged out the repeated sounds on purpose, using them like a drum beat to build up tension before delivering the rest of the sentence with deep power. He wasn't a nervous man struggling to speak. He looked like a brilliant musical performer, intentionally styling his poetry with a hypnotic, rhythmic beat. The heavy tension in the room instantly vanished. The audience was completely spellbound. They leaned forward, riding the unique wave of his words. Because Julian stopped fighting the rhythm of his voice, his chest felt completely free. The natural stutter actually faded away halfway through because his anxiety disappeared, but he kept the rhythmic tapping going until the last line. When he finished, the entire auditorium stood up and clapped loudly. The crew that laughed earlier now stood with their mouths wide open in respect. Julian had faced his fear head-on and won. An hour later, the bell above the cafe door rang happily. Julian ran into the Page and Pod, holding business cards from famous publishers. He ran straight to Sasha and gave her a big hug. They thought the rhythm was a stylistic choice. They called it revolutionary, Julian shouted. He spoke perfectly because he was so excited. I stood on that stage, Sasha. I really did it. You always had a beautiful voice, Julian, Sasha smiled proudly, patting his shoulder. You just needed to stop treating your unique rhythm like a flaw. Julian sat down at a table, happily writing a new poem. Sasha watched him, but her warm smile slowly faded into sadness. She walked into the dark back kitchen. She pulled the small silver locket out of her apron pocket. She looked at the photo of her sister. This time, the memory hurt even more. She remembered the last phone call from her sister. Her sister was crying and stuttering, begging for help, but she had pressed decline because she was in an important business meeting. Her sister died feeling completely alone and unheard. I did not listen to you, Sasha whispered into the quiet room, a tear falling down her cheek. But I am making sure the world hears them, sweetie, every single one of them.